And she finally agreed, after screaming abuse at me, that she would pay me $50,000 a year once I went to full-time. Occasionally she'd send a text message complaining about her mental state, but it's never clear exactly what was going on. I remember she would text me complaining about her mental state, and that was about it. Like I said, I remember that day very well. When I got there, she had a bunch of friends with her. And originally, I thought she was alone. No, because it had become a pattern with her, and so I was merely placating her, I would say, and especially when I saw she was there with about 4 or 5 girlfriends and basically having fun, enjoying each other down by the pool. That's why she needed a swimsuit. And then they proceeded to hang her all day drinking while I sat around waiting. With my son, actually, I think it was a Sunday that day, I remember. We had to wait all day, and while they just hung around drinking by the pool. And then finally I went home, and finally she went back to her apartment, and then she wanted me to go back and pack her bag for her at about 10 o'clock at night on Sunday, and I said I couldn't go. By that point I'd already spent the whole day sitting there, so I said I couldn't go and pack her bag because I'd already put my son to bed, and she was very angry about that. I remember that.
Okay, so when you asked her if she was okay, you didn't actually care if she was okay. You said you were just placating her, right?
It was a standard procedure at this point. She was a very dramatic person. Over the course of the day, I observed Miss Heard enjoying the company of her friends for several hours. That's all I have to say on that matter. I don't recall exactly when it started, but it was usually her complaining and crying due to, I would say, insecurities within the relationship more than anything else. She would be very, very insecure a lot of the time, and she would call me up crying. I remember one time she called me when she was alone in New York City, and she was crying and walking around the street crying. And he wasn't there, she was alone, but I said to her that she needed to go inside because I was worried that the paparazzi might take a photo of her, and she was in a very dysregulated state. And so just out of kindness, I said to her it was better if she went inside rather than walking around crying in public. I remember that, but I don't remember exactly when that was. It might have been 2012 or 2013. As the job went on, we called each other less and less and did mostly text messaging. It was all text messaging we did.
Did you ever believe that Mr. mistreated her?
No.
So, and why not?
Just never any evidence of it at all. I was there almost daily in both her place and then eventually at his place in West Hollywood, and then ultimately at the lofts downtown. It was a daily basis experience, morning, noon, night, all days of the week. So, I never once saw any evidence of anything.
Did Miss Heard ever tell you that Johnny had hit her?
No.
Did she ever tell you that Johnny had pulled her hair or pushed her?
No.
Let me ask it a little bit differently. You never believed Miss Heard that Mr. Depp had mistreated her. Is that correct?
At the time or after? I never believed it. In what context are you talking about? During my employ or afterward?
During your...
No, never. And there was never any damage to the apartment that I witnessed. There was never any aftermath of anything ever that I ever saw.
Now, you, of course, have no personal knowledge one way or the other whether Johnny was abusive to her, correct?
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true, because if it was true, I would have seen the damage, even if I wasn't physically present in the moment of these alleged arguments.
And what's your basis for that statement?
Well, if someone's being beaten, there's generally physical evidence.
So your testimony is that if there was no physical evidence that you observed, then it couldn't have happened, the domestic violence by Johnny toward Amber. Is that your testimony?
No.
Well, I'm trying to understand what your testimony is. Maybe you could clarify for me, Ms. James. Is your testimony that you never saw firsthand evidence of Johnny being violent to Amber, that it couldn't have happened?
That's not what I said. You're trying to put words into my mouth. I don't appreciate that.
Did you, during the course of your employment, develop any personal knowledge of Mr. Depp's use of alcohol or drugs?
Not firsthand.
And what do you mean by not firsthand?
Well, I worked with Amber. I didn't work with him.
Did you ever see Mr. Depp using illegal drugs?
No.
Did you ever see Mr. Depp abuse alcohol?
No.
Did you ever speak with Dr. Kipper?
No.
Do you recall ever forming any concern in your own mind about any of Mr. Depp's behavior in his relationship with Amber?
Never.
Nothing you heard, nothing you witnessed, nothing you saw during your time with Ms. Heard ever gave you an inkling of concern about Mr. Depp's behavior toward Amber?
Never.
Did Ms. Heard ever ask you to monitor press for her?
Yes.
What specifically did she ask you to do?
I had a newsstand guy that was instructed to hold 2 copies of every magazine she appeared in. Was a newsstand on Sherborne Avenue, just off La Cienega, and he would hold them for me, and I would go there once a week to pick up a pile of magazines.
I'm sorry, you got muffled out. You said, and he would hold those for me,
He
and
would hold them for me, and I would go approximately once a week to pick up whatever magazines Amber was featured in, 2 copies of each, which I would then store in her garage.
Why would you store them in Ms. Heard's garage?
Because she didn't want Mr. Depp to see them.
Did she tell you why she didn't want Mr. Depp to see them?
No, she just got very angry with me one day because I hadn't quite made it downstairs to put them in the garage when she came home, and she went absolutely ballistic over that.
When you say she went absolutely ballistic over that, can you please describe what you mean?
Screaming, yelling, abuse.
Do you remember what she said to you?
No.
But it was abusive in your opinion?
Blind rage.
Over the 3-year period in which you worked for Ms. Heard, were you ever with Ms. Heard when she was getting dressed or undressing?
All the time.
How often were you present when Ms. Heard was getting dressed?
Every time she was getting dressed for a fitting, I would say 90% of the time I was there.
And just to clarify, was it just when Ms. Heard was in fittings that you would see her in states of undress?
No, it was also in her apartment. She had no issue with walking around naked quite often.
Did you ever observe Ms. Heard putting on makeup?
Yes.
How often did you see Ms. Heard doing her makeup?
Just when she was getting ready to go out somewhere for a party or something.
And when you interacted with Ms. Heard, and I understand it was quite frequent and regular, did it appear to you that she was wearing makeup?
She usually never wore makeup unless she was going to a special event.
And when she did go to special events, would you describe her makeup as heavy?
It would depend. It would, a makeup artist would do it, or if she would do it herself. If she did it herself, it would be light and usually adding lashes, and that's about it.
And I believe you previously testified to this, so I'm sorry for asking you again, but while you worked for Ms. Heard, did you ever see any types of injuries on her?
No.
Did you ever see any cuts?
No.
Did you see bruises?
No.
Did you see swelling?
No.
Redness in her face?
No.
How about Ms. Heard having black eyes?
Never.
A broken nose?
Never.
Missing hair clumps? Sorry, I didn't catch that. Ms. James?
Never.
How often did you see her cry?
Hard to put a number on it. Sometimes she would cry on the phone. I think at least once or twice she might have cried on the phone. And then as far as seeing her personally crying, she was a pretty dramatic person. It's hard to really put a number on it.
How many times do you believe that you saw her in person crying?
I would say twice, maybe twice.
Let's take that in bite sizes. The first time you saw Miss Heard cry in person, do you recall what she was crying about? Go ahead, Miss James.
Insecure emotions.
You remember her crying about being insecure. Is that correct?
Yes.
She felt insecure about her relationship. Is that correct?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
He didn't like being away from his physical presence.
Did Miss Heard tell you that she felt insecure when Mr. Depp wouldn't be present with her? Other than telling you she felt insecure about her relationship with Mr. Depp, what else did Miss Heard say about feeling insecure?
She told me she didn't like hanging out in his house with his friends because it was boring and they were all old men playing guitars and it wasn't interesting to her.
What was your impression of Mr. Depp?
He was very peaceful, very calm, almost shy, and very quiet.
Did you ever witness Mr. Depp be rude to anyone?
He's such a gentleman. He's like a total Southern gentleman. So no.
Did you ever see Mr. Depp lose his cool?
No.
Did you ever see him scream at anyone?
No.
Did you ever see Mr. Depp break something intentionally?
Never break anything, never throw anything, always completely passive.
Did Mr. Depp ever interact with your son?
Yes, he was very kind.
How often did Mr. Depp interact with your son?
Whenever they were in each other's presence.
Can you give me an estimate of how often that happened?
Oh, countless times. He would even teach him how to play guitar. He brought him back from vacations. He showed him his amazing makeup makeover when he was doing Black Mass. He tricked him. He leant over and was saying, "Do you know who I am?" Like the full makeup on his son's jaw almost hit the ground. It was really cute, actually. Yeah. He gave my son a little pick as well, a guitar pick, which he cherishes to this day as well.
What was your impression of Miss Heard and Mr. Depp's relationship?
It did not seem like a perfect relationship to me, based on a lot of insecurity on her behalf, which seemed to cause confusion in the relationship. Maybe the age gap was an issue because of their interests. I know that much.
Do you think that Mr. Depp was smothering of Miss Heard?
Oh, no.
Did it appear to you that Mr. Depp was jealous of Miss Heard?
No.
Did you ever have interactions with Mr. Depp by yourself?
Sometimes, yeah.
And what were those interactions like?
Just friendly chit-chat, which would stop immediately when Amber saw me speaking to him. She'd give me the evil eye, and I'd know to just quickly walk away.
In the 3 years that you worked for Miss Heard, did you ever see Miss Heard and Mr. Depp argue?
No.
In the 3 years that you worked for Miss Heard, did you ever see any physical violence between Miss Heard and Mr. Depp?
Never.
Did you ever see either of them being physically aggressive with one another?
No.
Did you ever see any property damage at Miss Heard's home?
Never.
Did you ever see any property damage at Mr. Depp's primary residence on Sweetser?
Never.
Did you ever see any property damage at the lofts or the penthouses at the Eastern Columbia building?
No. No, never.
Over the 3-year period in which you worked for Miss Heard, did you ever hear from anyone that Mr. Depp or Miss Heard had been in a physical altercation?
No.
When you say she was verbally abusive to you regularly, can you explain to me how she was verbally abusive to you?
Screaming over the phone. She screamed at me once in person, multiple times screaming at me over the phone. barrages of abusive text messages, day and night, a lot of them in the middle of the night, I think you're aware. I think between 2 and 4 a.m. the barrage would start. That's what I'd wake up to. All incoherent, not really making sense, just basically someone to lash out at, you know, no apparent reason to it.
You testified previously that you observed Ms. Heard be verbally abusive to her sister.
Yes.
What do you recall about that?
It was ongoing kick the dog kind of relationship with her sister, so it's really hard to pinpoint any specifics, but her poor sister was treated like the dog that you kick, basically.
You previously testified that you observed Ms. Heard be verbally abusive to her mother.
Mm-hmm.
What specifically did you observe?
Well, there is a video that online where you can see her being abusive first and foremost, so it's not even based on what I'm telling you. It's what I've seen, the interactions between the two of them when her mother was still alive, and the fact that her mother was terrified of her.
Did her mother tell you she was terrified of her?
She personally told me she was terrified of her.
Did you ever witness Ms. Heard tongue lash her mother?
Here and there, yes. Especially when it was build up to a stressful event or something like that, yeah.
You said you felt that Ms. Heard was verbally abusive to you. Can you provide me with any specific examples of this behavior?
Well, I thought I did earlier, but yeah, it was just so random and ongoing. You would never know when it was going to come left of centre. I do remember on one occasion when we were moving from part-time to full-time, and then the salary negotiations became a real bone of contention. And I specifically remember standing in her office where she leapt up out of her chair, put her face approximately 4 inches from my face. She was spitting in my face and telling me how dare I ask for the salary I was asking for, which was in fact approximately half of my regular annual salary. I was offering her that as a favour, and she felt that gave her the right to spit in my face. And there was a witness in the apartment at that time, by the way.
Ms. James, while you worked for Ms. Heard, did you ever observe her drinking alcohol?
Yes, I did.
What alcohol did you observe Ms. Heard drink in your presence?
Red wine.
Did Ms. Heard ever appear intoxicated to you?
Yes, she often did.
While you worked for Ms. Heard, were you aware of what, if any, prescription drugs she was taking?
Yes, because I had to pick it up and I often had to deliver it to her. To
You
set.
anticipated.
It was my job to pick it up and deliver it to her, also bring it to her if she was doing a photo shoot or, on set or something, if she'd forgotten it.
What prescription drugs do you remember picking up from Ms. Heard?
Provigil,
Any other prescription drugs that you remember picking up from Ms. Heard?
Accutane.
To your knowledge, did Ms. Heard ever stop taking Provigil or Accutane while you were working for her?
No.
Did Ms. Heard ever tell you that she was experiencing any side effects from Provigil?
She didn't say it, but I observed it.
You previously testified that you observed Ms. Heard having certain side effects from Provigil. Yes?
Yes.
What side effects did you observe Ms. Heard exhibiting?
Manic episodes, similar to if someone was on some sort of amphetamine drug. Moving very fast, not making a lot of sense, hyper-organising, hyper-tasking, just very, very hyper. Yeah.
Did Ms. Heard ever tell you that she had ingested illegal drugs?
Yes.
What drugs did Ms. Heard tell you she had ingested?
Mushrooms, ecstasy, and cocaine.
Based on your personal observations, did it ever appear to you that Ms. Heard was under the influence of illegal drugs?
Yes.
Why did it appear to you that Ms. Heard was under the influence of illegal drugs?
Disoriented, partying with friends, lots of heavy drinking, laughing, dancing, playing, all the sorts of things that go hand in hand with imbibing in drugs.
Would Ms. Heard's treatment of you change when she was intoxicated?
Yes,
How so?
she became more and more belligerent and abusive.
Did you see Ms. Heard wearing a bathing suit in May of 2014 at the Chateau Marmont?
Yes,
Based on your recollection, did you see any bruises on Ms. Heard's body?
Objection.
no,
Did you see any red marks on Ms. Heard's body?
no.
How would you describe the general atmosphere or mood of Ms. Heard and her friends at the Chateau Marmont?
To be honest, it seemed a little conspiratorial to me. Yeah.
How so?
Like a strategy meeting or something, and combined with a pool party. Hard to describe. It was very confusing. Originally, I thought I was going over for some major emergency, but then something else completely different was going on that day.
What made you think something completely different was going on that day?
Well, because originally it made it seem like she was having this major emergency and she was completely alone and she needed me very badly to come as quickly as possible. But when I got there, she was surrounded by people. Savannah, Io, Tillett Wright, and Rocky specifically, Raquel Pennington.
Did you observe Ms. Heard showing what appeared to be injuries to any of her friends at the chateau that day?
No.
How would you describe Ms. Heard's friends' behavior?
Friends hanging out together by the pool, having cocktails and spending the entire afternoon hanging around together.
You did testify earlier that one of the reasons you thought their relationship wasn't perfect was insecurity on Amber's part, though, right?
Yes.
So you developed an opinion that insecurity on Amber's part affected their relationship, but you did not develop an opinion that substance abuse or any actions by Johnny affected their relationship. Is that right?
That statement was based on communications directed to me from Amber, basically.
What communications specifically?
That she was sad, she didn't want to be away from him, blah, 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 that sort of thing. It would happen all the time.